Today, we're welcoming back to the show Huda Ammori, who's a co-founder of Palestine Action. Welcome back to the show, Huda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all the work you've been doing.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. We're glad you could. Palestine Action was founded, as I think most of our viewers and listeners will know, 4 years ago, nearly 4 years ago now, in 2000, the summer of 2000, by activists who wanted to go beyond marches and speeches and try and actually stop the Israeli war machine in its tracks physically. And their main target has been Elbit, Israel's largest private arms manufacturer. I think Elbit had 10 factories and offices in the UK, but now only has 8. Is that right, Huda?
Yeah, so they had to shut down their Oldham site and they left their London offices, but they have got another site now in Bristol, which they've been building for the past few years.
So the Bristol site is sort of the head office now in the UK. Is that right?
Yeah, so they have a headquarters in Bristol, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐫𝐶, and they also have a manufacturing research site, which they've recently launched with the help of the Israeli embassy. But actually, interestingly, the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 website in Bristol is owned by Somerset Council. So this is the only Elbit site which is actually owned by a local government, and there has been a concerted campaign against that council to evict Elbit.
And Huda, you recently wrote about how you, and just in the last few months, you and your comrades at Palestine Action have forced, I think, 3 companies, or is it 4 companies, to break their ties with Elbit Systems, which is, of course, the largest Israeli weapons manufacturer. What are those companies, and how did you force them to break their connections with Elbit?
Yeah, so the first one that cut ties was IO Associates, and they were the sole recruiters for Elbit Systems. They did all of their recruitment services for them, and they cut ties with Elbit after a 2-month campaign, which involved activists storming into their offices. Actually, activists stormed into their brand new Manchester offices on the day they opened it, and they were kicked out of those offices after actions against them after about a month. And, we had red paint sprayed over their different offices across the country. And it took 2 months for them to announce to us that they are cutting the contract with Elbit Systems. And we actually had someone inside IO Associates who left the company because of their work with Elbit Systems, confirmed that Elbit Systems was their biggest client. So that was quite significant for them to do so. After that, it was Fisher German. So that's been a 2-year campaign, and Fisher German managed the property of Elbit's factory in Shenstone, and there had been several, dozens of actions against them over the past 2 years. And then they announced to us that they are cutting all ties with Elbit Systems. And then after that, we had the website designers. Sorry. We had the website designers of Elbit's Leicester factory. It took one action. Someone spray painted drop UAV on their offices, and they wrote to us immediately saying that they are no longer hosting the website for Elbit's Leicester factory and will not work with the company in the future. And then the last, but perhaps most significant, was Crane and Nagel. They are one of the world's largest shipping companies, a multi-billion-pound multinational company. And they are one of only 6 companies who are actually licensed for the secure collection and transport of weapons and firearms. And they also wrote to us to confirm that they cut the contract of Elbit and to ask us to cease the campaign against them. And I think these string of victories signifies the growth of our campaign, as well as the strategy to also expand to their whole supply chain. Elbit can't operate if they don't have landlords to house them, if they don't have suppliers, they don't have recruiters. And even if they start looking for other services by other companies, they will start reducing that. It will the pool that they can choose from will be reduced. They'll get lower value. It's a massive distraction for them, a massive headache, and ultimately it's mounting the pressure on Elbit systems and their viability to continue operating.
And clearly it's working. That's really impressive. And we've spoken about in live streams in the last few weeks that at least 2 major Japanese companies have also cut ties with Elbit systems. And this also followed protests and grassroots organizing in Japan. Do you talk about internationally, not just Palestine Action, because last time we had you on, you talked about Palestine Action expanding to the US and I think now to Belgium as well. And also these actions in Japan, which are not Palestine Action, but are also targeting Elbit systems. Just give us a sense of the international picture in addition to these really incredible victories in the UK.
Yes, so we've seen the campaign against Elbit massively expand. There was an International Day of Action organised by Progressive International, and we saw people in Brazil taking action against Elbit over there. Like you said, also in Japan, across Europe, in America as well, in the US. And also we're seeing more actions, a lot of actions actually, in Australia with people taking action against Elbit, occupying rooftops of weapons companies. So the international campaign is really becoming extremely strong and more of a threat to Elbit systems globally. When we were targeting Elbit systems, we try and focus at where we are in our context and what we can do from our country, but seeing how other places, other campaign groups, other movements, Palestine Action expands as well, is becoming a global campaign against Elbit systems. We're threatening their interests everywhere, and ultimately that is applying a much bigger threat towards Elbit systems and ultimately the Israeli military. And Elbit's name is being tarnished through these actions left, right, and center across the world. And I think that's a key thing as well, is within the Palestine movement, we all need to know the names of the companies who are supplying the Israeli military, who are supplying these missiles, drones, munitions to massacre the Palestinian people, because a lot of them, especially Elbit, are operating right in front of us, and it's a tangible way for us to impact the Israeli military apparatus across the world.
Yeah, I mean, it really sounds like Palestine Action, and it sounds like you've sort of expanded your victory since the last time you came on the show. I want to play a clip of what you mentioned earlier about Somerset Council. These are the kinds of actions you've been doing. Palestine Action volunteers.
Aztec West for the last 3 years. Elbit Israel, we've seen the lease. Elbit Israel is also on the lease. It's not enough now to wash your hands and sell it. You should be terminating the lease and kicking Elbit out.
Over 26,000 Palestinians have been slaughtered, over 12,000 children killed, over 66,000 injured, and the majority of Gaza is displaced.
Thanks, Tamara. Maybe you can mute that now. Yeah, so I mean, so these are council sessions, right, where they're discussing the business of the local council.
Yeah, exactly. So all councils have public meetings and are open to the public. And Somerset Council, it came to light recently that they are selling off, they are planning to, I'm not sure if it's on the market yet, sell off the property of Elbit Systems headquarters at Aztec West 600. But we made it very clear that that is not adequate. Simply after 3 years of being complicit in the genocide and housing these war criminals, it is not good enough to simply say, well, we're going to sell it on and it won't be our problem and we won't be complicit. Actually, they now have a moral and legal responsibility to cut the lease of Elbit Systems and evict them before they sell on the property. And we know that there is a clause that says that if the tenant is doing anything immoral or illegal on the premises, then they shouldn't be in there in the first place. And I mean, what better case for an immoral and illegal company than Elbit Systems, whose CEO who said that they are crucial to the genocide, has boasted about their contracts with the Israeli military during this genocide, and is also on the board of Elbit Systems UK. And, you know, arguably by them doing this, they are making, and these are Somerset residents as well, who are taking part in this campaign, who are, you know, really annoyed that they have been forced to be complicit in this genocide in such a direct way through these councillors. And, you know, one of the hypocritical statements that have come out from this council is that they voted for a ceasefire in Gaza. You vote for a ceasefire while you're literally harboring the murderers of the Palestinian people. And I think we have to cut through these, you know, false statements of a show of support and actually make them, you know, actions speak a lot louder than words. And it's time for Somerset Council to kick Elbit out.
Well, I think it's brilliant whenever people can bring the issue right down to the most local level. You know, I know that one of the comebacks that the government in the UK makes is to claim that, oh, well, local councils have no business making resolutions about international issues. They should be focusing on local governance. And I think what this shows is that local councils are very directly involved, whether as property owners or whether they're supplying services to companies like Elbit System that are directly engaged in genocide. So I think that's brilliant. Asa, should we talk about another action that Palestine Action did? I'll just say as background here, a few years ago, I think it was in 2010, I visited Scotland, and I was very honored to be hosted for a number of events in Scotland. And one of the things my host did is they took us to visit the estate of very lovely grounds and house of someone called Lord Arthur Balfour. And I thought, when I saw that lovely country estate, I thought of making a declaration that this country estate now belongs to the Palestinian people. But you recently had some of your comrades had an action related to Balfour. Can we show that video, Tamara? And that is, of course, a painting of Arthur Balfour, who, of course, made the infamous Balfour Declaration when he was the British Foreign Secretary. That was in 1917, in which he essentially gave the blessing of the British imperial government to the Zionist plan to colonize Palestine and steal it from its indigenous Palestinian people. What's happening here, Huda?
So this was an action against the Balfour painting, which is in Trinity College at University of Cambridge. And as you can see, they pretty much destroyed that painting. It's worth noting as well that Trinity College do invest in Elbit Systems, but the main purpose of this action, I believe, was to highlight British complicity in the colonization of Palestine. And the fact that we are honoring figures like Balfour, and, you know, having his paintings up at the University of Cambridge, yet most people in this country were not aware of Balfour's role. And by default, not necessarily as aware about Britain's historic role and current role in the colonization of Palestine. So I think this action really brought out, you know, a whole debate and conversation around Balfour and around British complicity. Which is good to see, because, you know, as Palestinians and obviously all of you will know about Balfour, will know about the Balfour Declaration. You know, we're raised up knowing the name of Balfour, but for British people, that's not necessarily the same. Yet he was a foreign minister in Britain when he signed away the lands of Palestine without having the right to do so. So I think this has changed that. And actually people do know the name of Balfour now and understand, you know, what he did to sign away a land which he never had any right to do. And I also think that, you know, the reaction, you know, we have actions all of the time in Palestine Action, and this one just went absolutely crazy. And I think that actually shows that the fact that it went viral in itself does show, shows what society's views are in many ways, that they are shocked, so shocked about a painting that they didn't know existed being destroyed or torn apart, but yet that same reaction isn't given for when a museum is destroyed or universities are destroyed or families are massacred in Palestine. And so I think it highlights the moral inconsistencies in our society. And what do we really prioritize? Figures of Balfour or our role in genocide?
And also, I think it's, you know, many people will know that Balfour was the foreign secretary in 1917 when he issued, of course, the infamous Balfour Declaration. But people might not know that Balfour was also prime minister prior to that. In fact, it's a little bit of an echo of what we have now, where David Cameron, a former prime minister, is now the UK foreign secretary. And Balfour was a precedent for that. He became foreign secretary after being prime minister. And I believe that it was in 1905 that as prime minister, he pushed for the passage of the Aliens Act, which was not just specifically, not just a racist law, but specifically primarily intended at restricting Jewish immigration into the UK. And Balfour spoke up in the House of Commons in very derogatory terms about Jews in arguing for this law. So not only was Balfour an imperial racist, colonialist against Palestinians, against African people, against people in Asia, but he was very specifically and very avowedly an anti-Semite. So is it not amazing that in the UK, where there are witch hunts going on all the time, and in the Labour Party over supposed anti-Semitism, which is often not anti-Semitism, it is advocacy for Palestinian rights, that an august institution like Trinity College at the University of Cambridge would be honoring a Jew hater like Arthur Balfour.
Exactly right. And I think that, you know, doing actions like this where people can, when these points are coming through to the public, I think, you know, we are always, as you say, there's witch hunts about anti-Semitism and accusations of it, yet we don't look at our own historic figures who were so anti-Semitic that they wanted to colonize the Palestinian people in order to stop Jews from immigrating into Britain. And I think it's uncovered a lot more context to more people about the historic motivations behind the creation of the Zionist entity and the displacement of the Palestinian people. And also that, you know, Palestinians are not the ones to blame for the anti-Semitism. It's often come from European countries who have then imposed their own racism and creating another form of, you know, systematic ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people as a result. And also that this is continuing to this day. The complicity hasn't ended. It didn't end with Balfour. It began with Balfour in many ways, and it's continued to this very day. So rather than, you know, a lot of people will be sympathetic towards the Palestinian, but as people in Britain and in many different countries as well, we have to play more of an active role in fighting for the liberation of the Palestinian people, because it's not some issue that we are not connected with. Balfour and the British in many ways were the architects of allowing this to happen to the Palestinian people. And as people in this country who are opposed to that, we need to play an active role in breaking down that complicity and support for the occupation of the Palestinian people.
Yeah, I think the process you described, whereby there was a lot of controversy, public controversy in Britain over this particular action against this portrait of Balfour, very much reminded me of the destruction of the Edward Colston statue, the slave owner, who, you know, most people had not heard about before the statue was destroyed and dumped in the docks in Liverpool. It seems to me a very similar dynamic at play here, but maybe you could talk about, has there been any legal repercussions for the person who did this, and then maybe transition from that into talking about the recent moves to sort of smear you by the British government as extremist?
Yeah, so they haven't arrested the person who did the action, as far as I know. They did arrest someone else. They arrested someone who did an action against the Balfour statue in the House of Commons 2 years before and was found not guilty by a court. So it's clearly they did a lot of thinking there to try and arrest that person who wasn't even in the country during the time of the action. You know, great police work over there, but no one has been arrested as of yet who actually, you know, partaked in the action. But in terms of the latest move, so we've seen Michael Gove, who is now trying to introduce a new definition of extremism, which they're going to announce tomorrow. And there's been a lot of leaked documents, and there's been a lot of articles mentioning that Palestine Action is supposedly going to be on this list of extremists in this country, which it's quite interesting to see how this government responds to the increased support for the Palestinian people.
What does it mean? Sorry, what does it mean, extremist? Like, is this like an actual prescription?
No, so apparently, according to Suella Braverman, we don't meet the bar for terrorism. So they're now trying to find a new category for extremism. But basically, as far as we understand, the most they can do is stop us from engaging with politicians and stop us from getting funding from councils and ban us from speaking at universities. That is the kind of plans that they have for those who are labeled as extremists. They don't have the capacity to ban us. I mean, for us, that's not going to deter us. That's not going to stop us. And if anything, coming from a government who is so supportive and arguably is partaking in this genocide against the Palestinian people, for them to call us the extremists while they are so deeply complicit in the massacre of tens of thousands of Palestinians and the destruction of Gaza is laughable. And if we are seen as the opposite to them, then so be it. But in reality, most people in this country do not support genocide, do not consider those who are taking action to stop weapons manufacturers from partaking in genocide as the extremists, but instead those weapons manufacturers and the government are the extremists.
Well, it looks to me from what I've read about this is that if a government that the UK thought was one of its adversaries engaged in this behavior of labeling civil society organizations, because of course it's likely not just to be Palestine Action, but perhaps a whole range of groups, including mainstream groups that support Palestinian rights or take other critical positions with respect to British policy and effectively American policy, because the government in London takes its orders from Washington, as we all know, that they label their opponents extremist, they ban them from speaking, and so on. It looks to me like the actions of a very authoritarian, anti-democratic regime in the UK.
Yeah, it also seems to be hugely Islamophobic. Palestine Action is possibly going to be one, we'll find out tomorrow, But the vast majority of the others who've been named are Muslim organizations. And, to have an extremist definition of any kind is absurd, but then to only include a certain subsection of society is massively racist and Islamophobic and, complete opposite of democracy. Because what they're trying to say is that these are groups who undermine our democracy and undermine British values. But are we really at a time where we determine what values are British, and that British values mean supporting a genocide? There are plenty of people in this country who do not think like that. And so it is subjective, and it's subjective to those in power who are partaking in a genocide and who don't want any criticism. And, we don't engage with politicians. We're a direct action group. So, the fact that they don't want to engage with us isn't a big loss for us. But these Muslim organizations who actually represent a large part of Muslim society, for the government to say, we're not going to engage with you is insanity, in my opinion. It's the most anti-democratic thing they can do.
And sadly, this seems to be the direction so many of the Western so-called democracies are going. More and more repression, more and more demonization. And really, I think what we're seeing from the outpouring of horror at what Israel is doing, that these governments, they talk about isolating so-called extremists, but they seem to be completely isolated from their people. That seems to be the story. Even in Germany, one of the most fanatically pro-genocide governments in the country, I think they give the UK a run for its money in terms of their enthusiasm to see Palestinian blood spilled and to see Palestinians starved to death in a Nazi-like death camp, which is what Germany has helped turn Israel into. Even there, the most recent poll I saw from, I think it was from mid-January, maybe there's something more recent, that more than 60% of the German public oppose Israel's war on Gaza, and only 25% support it. So this fanatically racist, bloodthirsty government in Berlin is completely out of touch with Germans. It seems to be the same story everywhere.
Yeah, we don't have a democratic process in this country. I think we are going to see in the next election a lot of independents run, and but we're still not going to make up. We're not going to have an accurate reflection of who supports the Palestinian people in Parliament, because the major parties just aren't going to allow that. They've been practicing the most anti-democratic stuff on Palestinian activists, on pro-Palestine activists, to stop us having a voice for years, if not decades. And so we are at a point in time where there isn't a democratic process in this country, and they're just trying to make that even worse. And they have become completely detached from what, how normal people feel, and most people now will not vote for anyone. And I think as well with this government, it's all about, it's a political game for them. They have a general election coming up. For them, showing that they are being more Islamophobic, they think will gain them some votes by further dividing, British society. And the fact that that's where we are in 2024, I think is cause for concern for everyone. But also, I think it's further validates why we have to take the actions that we take in terms of direct action, because we cannot engage with these people. And there is a clear aim as well. Michael Gove, he was extremely pro-Israel, right?
And he is, just for our viewers outside the UK, Michael Gove is the Home Secretary in the UK, who sort of like the Homeland Security Secretary in the US.
Yeah, he's been in for about 5 minutes. I can't, there's a revolving door of these, ministers who come in for a little bit of time.
And he's a really extreme Zionist, just to say. He's long been incredibly dedicated to Israeli racism for many, many years.
Yeah. So I don't know, just if we want to, Huda, just because we're about to wrap up, I wanted to show you this video. Sort of, maybe this is a very different kind of government minister compared to the ones you have in the UK. This is a short video clip from of the South African Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor, and she was speaking a few days ago at an iftar in South Africa, in the Muslim community. And there's actually a 16-minute long video on YouTube of her comments, which are absolutely brilliant. We're not going to show the whole thing. Just want to show you this clip, if we can show it, Tamara.
What we all have to fight for here, and I've asked this everywhere I've spoken, if you have a few hours, could you take your time and just make a poster? The poster should read, "Stop Genocide," and go and stand outside 5 embassies. There are 5 primary supporters of Israel. I'm not going to name them for you. You must do your work. As the women in black did for us when we were fighting apartheid. Stand up and petition. Stand up and protest. Stand up and be visible. Don't only come to this dinner. Be visible in support of the people of Palestine. Be visible. Sign a petition. In Cape Town, I said they want to destroy UNRWA. Let's make sure we provide funding for it. I said this at the mosque, and alhamdulillah, our people have come forward. We've got money, we will send it to the comrades. So let us not just be visible in a protest march or in a meeting. Let's just take 10 of us, not many. And we say, today on Monday, for 2 hours, you'll be at this embassy, you'll be at that one, you'll be every day. It pinches that visibility. But our silence allows injustice. So let us stand up.
I just thought that was such... Yeah, I just thought that was such an unusual thing for a foreign minister to say. And she also, elsewhere in her comments, supports boycott as well. I just wanted to get your reaction to that. How does that compare to what you hear from your foreign minister in the UK, for example?
Well, it's completely different, and it's extraordinary to see that. But, you know, our ministers are more obsessed with being seen as being supportive of Israel, no matter what they do in Gaza, and hasn't entertained at all supporting the Palestinian people. And, you know, like, for example, when we had this International Court of Justice ruling on genocide, we had the government's response about their arms sales was, well, even though their own laws ban them from selling arms, if there is a risk, it could be used in violations of international law, which the ICJ ruling clearly showed there was, and they shouldn't be doing it. And their response was, well, Israel has told us that they won't be used in violations of international law. And, you know, and it went completely against the judgment, said, we believe Israel has a right to defend itself. So they are willing to fly in the face of, you know, what we're supposed to be standing by, these international conventions and international law, in order to support the genocide of the Palestinian people.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Huda, for being with us again. We appreciate it. I'm sure we'll get you and perhaps others from Palestine Action on again in the future. How can viewers find out more about Palestine Action or support your work?
Our website's palestineaction.org, and our Twitter and Instagram is pal_action. And we are going to have training days across the country in Britain, so you can watch out for those as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Huda, and thank you to you and all your comrades for your courageous, really courageous and exemplary work.
And thank you for platforming us and for the work you do.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.